And now, please welcome to the stage with Google Cloud Security, Carrie Maitrey.
All right, thank you for joining me. I think I'm in the last session of this theater of the day, so I appreciate you guys coming. Today I'm going to talk to you about the Defender's Advantage, how to capitalize on it, what it is, what the framework is we came up with. So if I just start here, the Defender's Advantage is a concept that attackers are not attacking us in their environments, they're attacking us in our environments. We have control over our environments. We know more about our environment than anything, so we should have an advantage. The problem is that most people don't capitalize on it. So what Mandiant has done is we took together our knowledge that we're learning on the front lines and we put together a framework. These are the domains of IT security. So we have cyber security governance, security risk management, security architecture, and cyber defense. Cyber defense is where I'm going to focus on today. So here's the 6 critical functions of cyber defense, but I want to take a step back and say, why do we need another framework? Why is Mandiant qualified? Yes, I got some nods. Why is Mandiant qualified to actually put this framework together? So Mandiant sees organizations on their worst day. We see them when they've been breached. We see what they're going through. We've done so for 20 years. From that, we can take that information and say, what can organizations do to avoid that worst day or minimize the impact of it? So therefore, I think that Mandiant's qualified to put together this framework. The other thing is that this is built upon real world experience, not the ideal dream state, okay? And everything I'm going to present here, I'm not going to say that any organization in the world has actually accomplished all this. I'm just saying here's where we want to get to as organizations. I also want to say it doesn't just apply to organizations that are 100-person security teams and extremely well-funded. The framework also applies to teams of 1 or of 3 in the concepts. Each one of the things that I'm going to talk about, there might be one person handling all of these things, but they still apply, okay? So the 6 critical functions of cyber defense are intelligence, detect, respond, validate, hunt, and mission control. Am I missing anything yet? We'll go into some more details. So what I want to say is intelligence is the guiding light. If you don't know what you're going after, if you don't know what you're looking for and what you're defending against, why are you trying? You know, then it's kind of like you're setting up a mousetrap and hoping to catch something, as opposed to knowing who's coming after you, who's targeting you, what types of TTPs they're using, IOCs. So intelligence really is the guiding light, and it guides the other critical functions of cyber defense. So it's not, let me say this, you don't have to have your own intelligence function. We all know that there's a lot of feeds out there that we can get. One of the last articles I read said organizations use approximately 7 different feeds, but I've known people that talk about 40 different feeds. A little bit too much. So you need to figure out what you're going to curate, what sort of intelligence you want. You need to make sure that it applies to your organization. You need to understand how you're going to use it. Because I've also seen organizations where they have these feeds. Maybe it's just an email feed, and maybe 2 weeks later they're going to read it and maybe put in a control. Or they get this information and they don't know how to share it with other pieces of the org. Because I guarantee that your IT department's going to use the information differently than your SOC. And most of the time, your executives aren't going to care until it's, you know, a big deal that's on the front page of the news. So you got to know how people are going to consume it. You got to make sure that you understand that you're regularly checking in with them to say, how are you using this? What can I do better, et cetera. Now, what I think is, I agree with Andrew Close here, who gave this quote, that the cyber threat profile is probably the most important thing that you should have in your cyber defense program. And a lot of people think of the cyber threat profile as just the blue thing and the green thing, okay? Who's targeting you? What are they coming after? And then your organizational profile of where am I actually vulnerable. Many organizations stop there and they forget the yellow part of, okay, if it does get me, what's going to be the impact? How bad is it going to be? Now, the reason I think that a lot of people don't do the yellow is because it's a different team. It's going to say, what is the actual business impact? If I'm in a threat intelligence team, I'm not qualified to say what business impact it's going to have. You need business operations involved in this. But I think that the cyber threat profile is the most important thing you can do, and you need to keep it updated. So one more thing on cyber threat intelligence is how it can affect the rest of your organization. So it can trigger hunt activities. It can help you prioritize vulnerabilities. It can inform your security engineering teams on what detections they need to put in place. It helps you refresh playbooks to reflect what's happening out in the world. It can help you rapidly contain a breach and avoid future compromise. The percentage of recompromise that we see from organizations who try to do their own remediation is awful. Okay, it's very, very high. So using threat intelligence can help you avoid that recompromise if applied properly. And then reducing the impact of an attack. But let's get on to the next bit, detecting. Okay, so many people will run to say, I just need more visibility. Just give me more visibility. And I always push back on that and say, if you put in new tools, you're going to further overwhelm the analysts that you do have. And if you put it in and they don't know how to use it or they don't know what to do with it, you've just wasted a lot of money. You just wasted a lot of time. So while visibility is what we really, really want to get to, we need to make sure that we can actually handle that within our orgs. So don't just throw in tools and say it's good. Make sure that you have the training programs in there. You know what you're going to do with them. You know how they're going to stay maintained. Typical hygiene things. Part of detect as well is that detection engineering, very important, a cycle. If your detection engineers are not sitting in the SOC, making sure that that communication with them is flowing well. The next piece is responding to compromise. So, on the worst day, oh crap, that's what happens. Oh crap. A lot of times we see organizations who have not practiced their incident response plan, or they have not included their executives. So what happens then? The technical team has a response, and then all of a sudden the executives are freaking out and saying, oh my God, we need to tell everybody what's going on immediately. With that, I would say don't. Okay, communication during a breach is very, very important to make sure that you're only giving messages out to the world once. And you want to make sure it's a good message. It's in one place. It's not okay, here, my 40 customers, here's a personalized email to each of you. Absolutely not. You want to send an email that says, go to this website for our statement, and then you can keep that updated. Totally tangent, sorry, but that's one of the most important things to me is practice it. Make sure you know how to communicate. But for responding to compromise, it's obviously minimizing impact, getting back to business, mitigating the repeat compromise that I spoke about, and then learning and improving. So one of the things that we see a lot is that there's panic. There's panic and it's, oh my gosh, I'm gonna get into the system, I'm gonna do whatever I think I should be doing immediately to shut off, contain the breach. But the problem is the more changes you make that are not well informed by intelligence can actually make the problem a lot worse. So don't jump to the whack-a-mole approach, as Eric Scales talks about in this quote. Make sure that you know what you're doing before you do it. Also on responding to compromise and eradication and security enhancement, think about things like, how would you do a mass password reset? Let's say that your organization is 100,000 people. They got breached. Everybody's password needs to be changed. How are you going to do that? Because if you got breached and you can't do that with the IT team for 6 months, recompromise is probably, very high percentage that that's going to happen. So those are all things that it's not just response and put out the fire, let's move on to the next thing. It's how's it going to affect the business. Targeted testing. We put a lot of money into cybersecurity. Look around, you're making lots of investments, putting in lots of tools. Let's make sure that they're working. Let's make sure that just because you have a firewall in there with 10,000 rules doesn't mean it's doing what it's supposed to do. Because somebody comes along and puts in an any, and you had no idea because you didn't test your controls. So make sure you're not only testing your controls, but testing your people. So there's a lot of things that you can do, like virtual simulators, to kind of walk through a breach and make sure that your teams are trained and know how to work together. And this is where I give my lecture about heroes. For some reason, we love heroes, and I'm going to say you do not want heroes in your SOC. Because the problem is that you have one person you go to, and they're going to solve all of your problems, and then they retire. They get another job. You want everybody trained on the same level so that no matter who's on vacation, who's sick, you can still handle that breach. I worked with an organization down in Australia, and no shit, but half of their team won the lottery and quit. And that was their access, right? I was like, you guys are lying to me. No, it actually happened. So you don't really want heroes. You want processes. You want everybody to be, following those same things. The other thing in here is drill, drill, drill. So make sure that you are constantly going through tabletop exercises, but not only technical ones, also executive ones, also with your legal counsel, also with your insurers, to make sure that the insurance company is going to want to get in there as soon as possible. So think about that and figure out where in the process you want to bring them in, when you want to bring in legal counsel, things that are definitely outside the realm of technical, but need to be thought of. Oh, one more thing on that. If you test your teams, if you test your technology and it fails, that's not a bad thing. At least you found it. So don't be afraid to kind of build that culture of it's okay to fail. It's okay to, have people that aren't trained as much as they should be. Figure out, you're finding those gaps, you're fixing them. So build that culture of it's okay if we're not perfect, because I guarantee you, none of us are perfect. So build that culture. Hunting for active threats. So there's a couple things here. There's tools that do automated threat hunting. Okay, there's tools that will do that threat hunting, red teaming in cloud. So if you put a new workload into your cloud, that can automatically test. But if you're doing real threat hunting, you are not just throwing a pin against the wall and saying, that's what I'm going to test today. It is intelligence driven. There's a new threat in the wild and I want to know if it's affecting me. It is, I suspect an insider threat. Go get them, okay? So you want to make sure that you're following this repeatable, scalable, measurable, and sustainable process. It needs to be time bound. And if you try something for 2 hours, 2 weeks, and you're not finding anything, move on. The purpose is not to keep going and going and going until you find something bad. It's to apply what you know, apply that intelligence, try to find it. And if you don't, move on to something else. Don't get stuck in one place. So the other thing is to make sure with hunting, with detect, with response, your logs are going to be important. So, think about that log retention. If you are you're only holding 30 days of data, you're going to miss a lot. Now I know that it's like a financial commitment to make sure that you have enough logs, but consider that. Consider what you do have. And what you don't. I just gave a presentation earlier about the long tail of dwell times. And it's, of our investigations, about half of them we find before a 30-day mark, which means half of them we don't. And some of them are, 5 years before they're actually found. Your chances of having logs for 5 years are probably pretty low. But the longer you can extend your logs, the more hunting you can do, the more incident response you can do. It's just going to help you along. So think about your logs, do log analysis. The threat hunting process, use that intelligence to come up with your hypothesis. Scope the hunt mission. What are you trying to do, and what sort of logs do you need to achieve that? Make sure that you're acquiring that right environment, setting up that environment with the right log data, with the configuration information that you need. Sometimes you can't do threat hunting in a production environment. Know that. So how are you going to duplicate the environment so that you can do testing there? Analyze the results, take action, and then, of course, if you find something, figure out how you're going to escalate it. Is it the same person? Is it a different team? Etc. Now, all of these come together in mission control. All of the 6 critical functions. Mission control should not be a blocker. Okay, mission control is where process and procedures come together. It is typically made of people that come from different pieces of the business or people that come from the different functions. Intel, threat hunting, detection and response. They establish those processes. They make sure that everybody's kind of talking to each other and that information is getting where it needs to be. And one of the most important things they do is that major incident management. So they're the ones that are going to make sure that the executives know, that the executives can trigger crisis communications, that they can figure out when the insurance is coming in, when legal is coming in. That's mission control. One of their responsibilities is to communicate with those executives and make sure that that's all happening. The other thing is mission control needs to have the authority to act. So a lot of times they feel, people that are working a SOC, you're working with a big breach, you feel hamstrung because I need to make a change to this IT system and the IT team's not letting me do it. So there needs to be that authority to act. And again, that's like a cultural thing if you need to build that up in your org. So with that, how do we activate this? Like I said, you are probably not going to be able to do all of these things all together. But what we want to make sure that you do is not a checkbox list of, I'm compliant. I did these 20 things, I'm good. It's how these things are working together. So it's not just, yes, I have a process for this. How often do you test it? Are your people involved? You need to get stakeholder buy-in, like I spoke about. Staffing considerations. If you don't have a big team, reach out to partners. There are people that do manage detection and response. There are people that can help. Think about your budget when you're doing that, but you don't have to do it by yourself. Use the experts because they're going to be able to do it faster, cheaper, probably better, unless you have a very mature organization. And then one last thing is you want to try to use flexible consumption models. If you're reaching out to those other organizations for help, make it flexible so that, so that you don't get stuck. We put together plans of what's going to happen in 2025. I guarantee you that in cybersecurity, what you think is going to happen next year is not what's going to happen. So you want to make sure that when you're engaging with a third party that you keep things flexible as your priorities change throughout the year. And as Kevin said, you know more about your business, your systems, your topology than anyone else. This is an incredible advantage. So we want to make sure that you're using it. All of this is documented in our Defender's Advantage book. If you go around this wall over here, there's a Defender's Advantage cafe if you'd like to pick up a copy. And then you can look at it. It goes in pretty detailed about exactly what you should be doing in these different bits, the different critical functions of your cyber defense team. So with that, I am running out of time. So if you have questions, I'll move off stage. But thank you guys for joining me.